Every one of our clients will own at least 5 investment properties.
And it's our mission to show you how. My name's Frank Ambesi.
And I'm Adrian Trimboli, and welcome to the Invest in You podcast. Awesome. Hello, Frank. Welcome again. Welcome to the viewer. Let's get right into it. As promised last time, we are speaking about the four key investor mindset principles. Thank you, Frank. This one, as you would know, started at 10. We got it down to 6, and now we're at 4. There's a reason why we have decided to put this really at the start of the in-house Invest in You podcast, because we believe that this is probably, outside of finance, outside of research, this is probably the most important thing to determine whether or not an investor is actually going to be a strong investor, a good investor, or just like the average, right? And it comes down to these principles. So today, the session, essentially it's to walk you guys through what both Frank and I have really, we treat this as religion now, right? As in these principles. But most importantly, we've seen our best clients actually adopt these principles and become very, very successful in property. We've also seen, and we're going to share stories with you guys today, how some of our, I won't say worst clients, but how some of our clients have essentially been held back by not having these principles lined up. Essentially, by not having these lined up, not actually really adopting the principles, they've been stuck. So again, listen to this podcast. By the end of the podcast, I hope that you guys walk away with complete understanding, and if you can adopt them, you will thank us in the years to come. Okay? You cool for me to roll into it?
Let's go.
Cool.
Jump into it.
Investing principle number 1 is it is a business and shit is going to go wrong. Now, you shared last time about shit going wrong in your own portfolio. Obviously, things have gone wrong in my own portfolio. You might chuckle. I've got a little story here. So I don't know if you remember the client. I won't mention the client's name, and I won't mention the client's name, but I'll tell the viewer the story. So every 6 months, you obviously sit down with a client post-purchase. So we purchased a property for a client. I think it was in Townsville. You don't know the client, so you won't know yet. But we purchased the property in Townsville of February 2024. Townsville was the best performing region last year.
Yes. Yep.
Cool. Purchased a property in Townsville last year, 2024. Purchased the property for about $440, I believe the property was purchased for. 6 months came, it was September, and the team, what we do in the WhatsApp chat, we sent a message to the client and said, hey, congratulations, your property's grown by 18%. Woohoo, 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 right? And everyone got really, really excited. I don't know if you're going to remember this story. You might. We all got really excited. The client responded with, guys, this is great, but I just had to spend $2,500 on fixing X, Y, Z. I don't know if you remember the client. Do you remember? Yeah, okay, you remember the client. We had a bit of a chuckle. I remember calling the buyers. I called Ryan after the event and I said, mate, isn't this crazy? Like how nuts is that? This guy's made $100,000. I think it was $100,000 in growth in 6 months. The client was on $120,000 of income. So essentially that means he's doubled his income in 2024, yet he was really upset about the $3,000, okay, or $2,500. I think something had to get fixed up. Now we had a chuckle and we had a laugh, and that's that. But what is the actual principle, and what is the lesson that you guys can take away from this, which I think, Frank, you and I, complete opposite if we were to say, and I think our best clients are also complete opposite. What was the lesson? Well, first things first, got water. Got water going on.
Share the water.
Go the water.
I'll share the water.
What is it?
Hydrogen water.
Yeah.
You want to know more about it, or you reckon just leave it at that?
Turns you into a mermaid.
Yeah, it does. I think we'll leave it at that. Otherwise, we're going to...
Keep going.
We can stay for 4 or 5 hours and talk about conspiracies if you want.
Yeah, if you want, we can paint these black, and we can smoke methamphetamines together. And
yeah, we can definitely do that. I'll love to do that.
You know what? Let's smoke meth and let's drink hydrogen water and turn into mermaids.
You had a chuckle with Ryan, and then
what's the lesson? Yeah, so we had a chuckle together as a team. Amelia's laughing in the background. Hydrogen water. We had a chuckle with the team, right? And I called up Ryan. I said, mate, that is hilarious. But what is the lesson that you guys can take? And what is the actual principle that both you and I, Frank, we share, but also our best clients share, and it's able to move them on. There's a few. Firstly, this client had the expectation that he was going to make $100,000, $150,000 in the first year, and nothing was going to go wrong. Perfect. It was all going to be just crystal clear. He essentially thought, and like if we maybe talk about ourselves and not kind of push our client in a bad light. I've got a goal of having $200,000 passive income by 2038, by in 8 years, right? Not 2038, 2033, right? 8 years, 200K. You've got a goal of buying your dream home and having hundreds of thousands of dollars of income. It would be saying that that's your goal, but you're not expecting anything to go wrong. That's delusion. That is the principle here. So the first principle, and for you guys as the viewer, the thought that you're going to make 100 grand, 150 grand per year, per property, and it's going to grow and grow and grow, and your tenants are always going to be perfect, and the property is always going to be perfect, and there's nothing ever that's going to go wrong. It is complete. Do not get into property. And I know that might sound harsh, but the client hasn't purchased another property, right? The client's made 150, maybe 200 grand now in growth in a year and a bit. Well, it's a year now. He hasn't purchased another property because of this $2,000 fix up or the property not going excellent. Had he purchased another property, which he could have, he would have done the exact same thing. But he would have had another 250K worth of growth. So that decision, by not understanding, hey, the expectation is it's property, I understand that it's not all rainbows and sunshines, already has cost him 150 grand. It's probably going to cost him millions of dollars now that he doesn't buy it. Does that make sense? Do you share any light on that?
Yeah, and I think a question I want to ask you so the listener and the viewer understands is majority of people in society, are they working as a PAYG, working for someone, or are they self-employed?
PAYG.
Why is that?
Why is that? Where are you getting at here? Why is everyone trying to...
Risk.
Yep. Yep.
So people don't start a business because it's hard or it's risky and potentially going to lose money. You're not going to make money. A lot of people say the first 3 years you're not going to make money.
Yep.
Well, when you start a business, that's correct. But in business, you don't always be making money. We've lost money. Lost a lot of money. And there's months we don't make money. And you'll go through property like that. You will have expenses. Things will pop up. And it's the exact same thing. It's a business. You're starting a business. When you invest in property, you are starting a business of providing housing to, tenants and in the country. But as well, you get an incentive for growth and, cash flow and things like that.
Correct.
But there's going to be things that go wrong. So majority of people they don't have the mindset to understand the risk, and they get themselves into property because they just, like you said, they're going to think it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows, make hundreds of thousands of dollars with nothing going wrong. Complete opposite.
Yep.
There's going to be things going wrong. Anything you get yourself into that involves an investment, if it's gold, crypto, stocks, they'll go up and down, emotional roller coasters. You will lose some, you'll make some money as well. But you need to have that mindset that you're getting yourself into something that is called a business, regardless if it's property or a physical business.
I like that. It's actually a very good point. I actually do. Yeah, I really like, and maybe that is what it is. That he didn't understand the risks. I think something that potentially held him back, which is still on this topic, right, of it is a business, something which has helped us walk through this and kind of be able to go, well, hang on, no, this is the principle, is we've actually lost money on property. This gentleman, again, you know him now, he hasn't lost money on property. So him seeing 150K growth in the first year.
Sorry, when you say lost money on property, what do you mean by that? Because some people...
Excuse me. Sorry. Thank you. Good point. We bought property, they went backwards. People don't understand that, like, not all property is up. We bought properties, both of our properties, right? Rawad, who's in the team. Who else has lost property in our team? I mean, that's 3, right? Nick, our best friend, right? A lot of people, and to the viewer, a lot of people lose money on property. This gentleman hadn't realized that. So for him, the gain of 150K was because he hadn't felt the burn, because he thought that, all business or all property just goes like crazy. He doesn't have the true admiration or the true respect for the fact that he done 25% in 6 months. He didn't understand that, right? His expectation was that he was going to get the growth, nothing was going to go wrong, and for that, he now hasn't bought another property. That will cost him millions of dollars over the next 15, 20 years. And that I think is why you and I go, well, hang on, we buy a property, it grows, that is what we're looking for. Yes, if it has $2,000 fixed here, yeah, that's just part of the game. So, yeah. That's the first principle. Do you want to move to the second principle?
Yeah, I was going to shed some light as well because I've gone
Please.
through the first one of my properties I bought in 2023. I bought in Bunbury, bought a property for 430. Mm-hmm. That first year was a nightmare. I had to do a bathroom renovation, and there was just expenses coming through. I think it was like 14 grand at the end of the year of just unknown expenses.
A lot of money.
And my CFO was like, well, "This property's costing us so much money. It's not great." I'm like, "That's fair enough." I get a valuation done after 1 year. I have 110 grand of usable equity. So I took out 110 grand and bought another property. That property I purchased in Gladstone, paid 450 for that property. I'm taking out $130,000 of equity less than 1 year. I think it's like 8 months.
That's awesome.
So the mindset is like, yeah, okay, I had all those expenses, renovation, bathroom reno, plus all these other things on that 14K loss, but I got another property, made 130 grand again on another property.
Yep.
And now I'm using that 130 grand right now to go get another property.
Yep.
So I think it's just a mindset shift that, yes, you're going to lose some money. I'm not saying just cop it on the chin and it is what it is. Of course, we want to make sure you do due diligence on a property. We're not saying go out there and just buy a property and don't do your DD and just buy it and you'll be fine. It's going to grow in value. But no, you need to do DD. And of course, some things you can't, you can't check if hot water surface is going to blow up or not. It happens. You can't help if a pipe bursts behind the shower and blows up your bathroom. You have to do a renovation. You can't predict that. So just have that mindset that yes, you're going to be losing money, but the gain is much more greater.
If the gain is much more greater.
If you've done the right due diligence and right research on the property and market, then of course.
Agree. It hurts, and again, this happened to both Frank and I. It hurts when the property's maintenance, 10 grand, 14 grand, and then the property's not growing, right? It's a pretty fair trade-off, right? And we hear a lot of clients say this, should I buy another property? It cost me 10 grand a year to hold. If the property's costing you $10,000 a year, but you're growing your net worth by 150 a year, you do that. Let's say you have 5 properties, right? A lot of our clients got 5 properties. They're making $600,000-$700,000 a year in growth. You only have to make that amount of money 1, 2, 3 years. Puts you in a very strong position. You can sell that asset. You can buy yourself a dream home. You can sell that asset. You can go cash out and do what you want. You can sell that asset, go buy a commercial asset and brings in 150K a year in cash flow. So yeah, it's definitely a good reminder that you don't want to buy property and you're going to be eating rice and tuna and you can't live right. But if you're saving $40,000, $50,000 a year, right, and you know that you can withstand the maintenance costs, the cash flow costs, you should be throwing every single cent at property, because if you're growing it at 100, 150K, you put yourself in a very strong position very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. So I like it. That's very good points. Let's move to the next one. The next one is you need to get your team in check. And again, we both have stories on this. I'll share my story. I might get you to share your story as well, but I'll share my story quickly. So I want you, the viewer, to think about when I was 18 years old. 18 years old, I bought my first property. And I want you to think about the team that I had around me. So 18 years old, my brother and I, my mum came to us and she said, boys, you've come back from schoolies. You've been working for, 4 years now. It's time to buy a property. And we said, cool, mum, let's do it. What do? We'd saved up about $35,000, $40,000 each, which is awesome. My beautiful mother, God bless her soul, she is an awesome saver. She's taught both my brother and I and my sister to be extreme tight asses. We still hold that kind of today. No investing experience. We bought her first property. You and I bought her first property. We're now buying multiple properties for her. She had no investing experience, right? So that was probably the first problem. My mother, who had no property, told me, hey, go and buy a property. Okay. But still, she's told us, go buy a property. We said, cool. She was the research team. We said, Mum, where should we buy the property? She said, well, you should go around the corner because, that's where the real estate agent that sold me my home in Coburg, he was a really nice guy. He will take care of you. That's the research team, right? So we bought an apartment around the corner from where we lived, which, if you haven't learnt already, buying a property in your backyard is not always the best thing to do, especially an apartment on a main road, which is, a K away from where you live. But that's what we did. We bought a property. It was around the corner from where we lived. We went to a bank, ANZ Bank. We got all dressed up and went to the bank, and that was it. There was no strategy. There was no research. The research team was my mother, who never bought a property. Obviously, so we bought the property for $255,000 in 2013. We sold the property for $275,000 in 2023. So made $20,000 in 8 years. So just to pause on that, made no money, right? The property cost us 10 grand a year. It was a shit box. It grew by nothing. It held us back completely. People look at that and go, well, we made 20K. I look at that now and we lost $300,000 because the property should have doubled, right? This is what most people do. Most people listen to their mother, listen to their father, listen to their accountant who says, oh, it saves tax, it's good. Listen to their mortgage broker who's got no property. Listen to, someone at a barbecue, and they've got no fucking idea. Whereas fast forward today, right? We go to make a decision. What happens? I say, Frank, we're going to go buy a property. Frank has got a research team now. Obviously, we're at a buyer's agency, so it's a bit different. But just for the viewer, how do you go about doing it and building your team? You need to know the research. You need to know where to buy the property, right? You need to know, if you haven't got a buyer's agent, you need to know someone who has connections in that particular area to buy the best property in that market. You need to have your broker. You need to have your accountant. We've got our CFO right now. So all of these things, when we make a decision to buy a property, we've got an entire team who's mapped out to our end goal, right? Like, you do triathlons, you've got a coach for your triathlon. You've built your goals and you've built your team based off your goals. It's just a different approach that you need to take. And if you don't take the approach of building your team and your board of directors, you will essentially just not be successful in property. That's my view on it. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I look at Tony Robbins, who I look up to when I went down that, self-improvement path. And the quote that he always said is, if someone's trying to become successful in life, people make the excuse that they don't have the resources. But he goes, it's not that you don't have the resources, that you're not resourceful enough. Mm-hmm. And what that actually means is getting people that are successful in those areas of whatever life it is, if it's investing in property, like I said, doing a triathlon, losing 10 kilos at the, so you lose 10 kilos and look great and be great on your wedding night or wedding day. Whatever it is, you need someone that can help you achieve that, and they've done it.
Yep.
And they've helped hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Yep.
And so I think we get this all the time. I got a client, or speaking to a client yesterday, and he goes, my accountant told me to buy in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I got a pre-approval of 900 grand. I go, why Melbourne? Because he said, that's where the growth is. Melbourne CBD, that's where the growth is. I go, that's funny. I go, Melbourne in the last 4 years, has it been the best performing market? And he goes, no. He goes, I'm like, so why would you buy in Melbourne? And he goes, because my accountant told me to. And I'm like, okay, but is your accountant, does he have property? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is
so because he's in financial services as an accountant, people trust that.
Yep.
But it's no different if I went to a mechanic and the mechanic said you need a filling, you're going to tell him to get effed because he goes, you don't know anything about teeth. But unfortunately, when it comes to financial services, we listen to a broker, even if they've got no property. We listen to an accountant and we listen to these people, and they just take you down a road that is really not going to give you any success. Agreed. Unless they've done it themselves.
Agree.
So I think this is, once again, it's another mindset shift of becoming more resourceful, finding people that have done it, and leveraging their knowledge to help you get there.
Yep. And it's actually not easy, right? How many brokers have we gone through?
Oh, hundreds.
How many accountants?
A lot of accountants, not hundreds, but yeah.
A lot of accountants,
50.
A lot of brokers, a lot of conveyancers. It's so it's not actually easy, right? Like, you need to work on this, much like old mate, our old client, thinking it's a business and everything's going to go hunky-dory. Like, you need to hire and fire your employees or your team, right? In order to get the best team. Like, you really do. It is a business. So understanding, and just behind the camera, if you're listening to this, a bit of an audit of what both Frank and I kind of share with their own portfolio. So today, it's very different from what it was when we started. Your mother was your source of research, the research person. She never bought a property. Same as my mum. We had a banker. No fucking idea. They just would tell us at an ANZ bank. And then we had a real estate agent that we trusted with our life to find us the best property.
You can trust them.
You can trust them, right? As far as you can kick them. I don't actually mean that. I love real estate agents because they work very well with us. Maybe cut that. The audit now. So what's our team now? I want to kind of just map it out just so people can have a bit of an understanding, at least a North Star of what to shoot for. So we've got, in my own personal WhatsApp group, I have my broker. Our broker's just done a massive development, a massive commercial development, understands property, right? That's my accountant. My accountant understands property, massive development, right? He's awesome. Our broker also understands property, very, very investment savvy, right? Has had a portfolio, and I'm very close with him, right? So he's very, very quick on the mark. We've also got my CFO, our personal CFO. So the CFO who takes care of our business is also our personal CFO. So he manages all our numbers. He's across everything. We've got our buyer's agent, right? We've got a specific buyer's agent that we work with, and we go, hey, like he's the most diligent. Let's go to him. We love that, right? We've got a conveyancer. Conveyancer on a Saturday night this is not a must, but our conveyancer on a Saturday night will get things to us if it needs to be pushed through, right? Those are really the main five. Of course, you got your property managers and you can source them out, but realistically, if you've got them in check and they've all got experience with buying property and investing in property, you're going to be pretty safe. Just make sure you've got your finance, your accounts, your setups, your trusts, and really your numbers really there. And then obviously you need your research honed in as well. And if you can't do it, get professional advice and get professional advice from someone who's been there, because you will get fucked. And we are living proof of that, right? Our first 3 properties were nightmares. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. It is a business, but on top of it is a business, you need to make sure that the employees of that business and your board of directors are the right ones.
Correct. 100% agree.
Awesome. We'll get into the next one.
Let's do it.
Okay. My team hear this quite often. You probably hear this quite often as well. The next one that I will say, and a lot of our clients hear this all the time, our philosophy of when to invest. The philosophy is, and it's very like in-depth analysis, invest when you can. That's it. There's 3 questions we ask, right? I'm gonna tell a little story as well, but there's 3 questions that we ask. I'm gonna tell you what those 3 questions are. That's the only 3 questions that you should ever ask yourself. And that will determine when you actually invest. So, another story. I've thrown out a few stories. The other story is Mr. Sebastian, so our personal CFO. For the viewer, we've got a personal CFO. He knows everything he knows your finances more than you know your finances yourself, right? And it's the same with me. So he manages Fresh Start Advisory's finances, but he also manages all of our personal finances. So he has, for myself, access to my stock portfolio. He reviews my stock portfolio every month, all my properties. He's actually got an email for my properties, so all the property managers email him. I don't even know what's going on with the properties. He manages how much I spend, the budget. He knows everything about my finances, right? His name's Sebastian. He takes a lot of stress off us. Mr. Sebastian, so when Mr. Sebastian walks a lot, right? He can walk for a very, very long time. So when I go catch up with him, I know I stretch before it and I go, fuck, I've got to really stretch, because Sebastian loves walking for multiple hours, right? It was the start of February. So it was last month at the start of February. And it was a Friday night and I said, Seb, what are you doing? He goes, mate, let's go for a walk. So I started stretching and then I went and caught up with him, right? It was Friday night. It was a hot night.
What runners do you?
Hockers. The ones that I use for the triathlon.
Yeah.
Or use for the triathlon. I won't do a triathlon
Carbon
again.
plated ones?
No. The ones that you told me to get.
Okay.
They're good though.
They're good. They're pretty good.
Anyway, I go to catch up with him. It was Friday night. It was about 8 o'clock. The sun was almost going down. And we started walking, right? Got there. And when we walk, we have big philosophical chats or in-depth chats. They're awesome walks, right? At the start of the walk, right, I said, Seb, I want to buy another property. Now, February, right, I'd already bought 2 properties. So I bought a commercial property this year, also bought a resi property, right? So I said, Seb, I want to buy my 3rd property this year. And Seb started going into all the reasons why I should not be buying the property. He said, no, he had in his mind the cash buffers, but he started saying things like, what happens if you have a very bad car crash? What happens if, you go to Europe and there's no money in there because I've got it planned to Europe? What happens if all your tenants don't pay for, which is very, very hard, right? I've got 7 properties, all tenants not paying. It's a catastrophe, right? Started saying all these things were outside of the norm and outside of these 3 questions that I'm about to share with you. And as he was going, I was letting him talk, as I always do. I let him talk. I said, Seb, if all those things were to happen, I would sell some of my stock portfolio. And that's what I've got, a stock portfolio, right? Anyway, fast forward, conversation had. After we had the conversation, we looked at each other. I said, Seb, I'm buying the property. I voice messaged our buyer's agent through that chat, right? I said, yeah, Austin, we're ready to buy the property. Let's rock and roll. And that's what we kind of decided to do. We're going to go buy the third property, right? The lesson though for you, and it's kind of different examples I use, but more so the common examples I hear are Donald Trump. Let me wait for Donald Trump to get elected to then work out if I'm going to buy a property. Wait, hang on. What's happening in Ukraine? Let's wait for that until I buy a property. Interest rates might not drop. Let's see what happens and then I'll buy the property. All of this is bullshit. And this is the lesson that I want you guys to understand. There are only 3 questions that you need to ask yourself of when the right time is to buy the property. You and I have adopted this. Our best clients, a client of ours, Damien and Guy, they've bought 5 properties this year, right? Or in the space of 12, 18 months. They've got the exact same mentality. The 3 questions they ask themselves. 1, can I borrow $400,000 to $500,000? For me, it was a tick. 2, have I got the cash buffers in place? If I buy a property, have I got $10,000 sitting there in spare? For myself, I could have sold stocks. So yes, I did have that $10,000. And then 3, have I got the ability to actually repay all the numbers stack up? Can I repay everything? Is it all good? If those answers are tick, 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 you buy the property. You don't worry about what's happening to Donald Trump. You don't worry about what's happening to interest rates. You just buy the property. Why? And this is the decision that I made with Sebastian, right? Sorry to go on a bit of a tangent. I buy a property today for $500,000. The property is going to be worth $600,000 to $620,000 on average. Our average capital growth rate is above 20%. So $600,000 to $620,000 within a year. Sebastian wanted me to wait until June to buy the property. That decision there would have cost me $60,000 in growth. Whereas I looked at it, I answered those 3 questions, boom, 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 I could do that. I bought the property. Or I'm buying the property in the process. I've got to settle on the first 2 properties and then I'm going to buy the property. The decision to not move because of all these outside noises, you're just going to lose money. That's essentially what it is. I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but please, I'm eager to hear your thoughts on it.
It's interesting because I hear the Donald Trump, the Ukraine, interest rates, the stories all the time from clients and others. And it's funny because when you look back, I'm reading a book at the moment and it talks about, it's called The Secret Book. Secret Stories a bit of Real Estate and Banking, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's going back to the GFC and it goes all the way back into like the 1800s. And it talks about the stock market and it talks about the property market and what happened in Australia and in America. And the GFC back in 2008, the global financial crisis, for some people may have gone through it. For some people, you probably would be young and you probably don't know what happened, but there was a global financial crisis where the banks collapsed in America and, some banks closed down. The property market just lost so much value in America, like even in Europe. And you're talking, property prices probably dropped more than 50, 60%.
In America?
Yeah, in America and in Europe. In Europe suffered it as well.
Gotcha.
And so Australia didn't suffer that. Property market during 2008, 2010, in between there, some markets grew in value, some markets went sideways.
Yep.
But markets didn't lose 50, 60% at all. And so people worry about what's happening in other countries, but they're not worrying what's happening in their own backyard. How are you supposed to know what's happening in another country when you don't even know what's happening in your own backyard? You know what I mean? Like my neighbor, I speak to my neighbor, I say hello when I pull out the bins. I know, he works as a construction worker. I know a few things about him. I don't know that much about him, but I guarantee I know more about him than what I know about America or what's going on in America to some degree. You know what I mean? Just because of listening to the news is not going to give you an informed decision. So where am I going with this? Where I'm going is look what's going on in Australia. Have a look what's happening with the property market. Don't worry about outside noise. We had May 2022, we had 22 rate increases. Property markets grew 30, 40% during those times. During those times, the people that were saying, I'm going to wait, they're the losers. But the people that invested, like ourselves and our clients, they made hundreds of thousands of dollars. during interest rates increasing. I had one client at the start of this year go, I'm going to wait to see if there's going to be a rate decrease in Feb. What's a silly question? You've already bought 3 properties with us. This is one of our clients. They bought 3 properties already with us during that time. They made hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like I think you need to really look at what's going on currently in your market, analyze the risk. And if you can afford it and you've got the buffers in place and you've got the deposit and you've got, the affordability, invest, because there's always going to be markets that are doing well. There's always going to be markets not doing so well. Melbourne in the last 4 years has gone backwards. Brisbane, Adelaide, WA as well, and Perth been the best performing markets in the country.
Yep.
So the fact is that there's always going to be markets going up and down in different times, regardless of what's happening with the economy, regardless of what's going on with America, regardless of what's going on with interest rates, just understanding the risk.
100%. The actual third principle of that, the third question, is do I have a deposit of 80 to 100K? So excuse me, I think I said cash buffers twice, but it's the actual third question to ask is, do I have a deposit? So do I have the deposit in either equity or savings, 100 to 80 to 100K? Can I borrow 4 to 500K? And do I have the cash buffers in place? Those are the 3 questions that you need to ask.
And cash buffers, what do you...
$10,000 I like for myself personally.
Per property?
Per property, correct. $10,000 per property. Obviously, interest rate environment and just buying a residential property is going to cost you about 10K a year, 10 to 15K, give or take. Obviously, that's not a lump sum, but you want to have at least $10,000 spared just in case, a hot water service pops up. That's my personal preference. It's not everyone else's. Someone might have $50,000.
Yep.
I get a bit funny when I see too much cash in my bank account because that cash is not compounding at the rate at what your properties can compound. If you can do 20%, yeah, you're making very, very, a lot of money. So for me, $10,000 is my kind of where I like to see it. But not everyone risk profile is the same, and you just need to answer that. So that's that. But that's the third piece. I think, you made a really good point on the last piece there. If you know how to buy property and you know how to buy the right property, there should be urgency to buy that property because there's never been a time in the Australian property market where the entire country's been going down, right? There's always been a time in the Australian property market where properties have gone ballistic. If you're buying shit properties, take 5 years to buy a property, right? Genuinely. But if you're buying the right properties and you know that you can buy properties and they're going to do 15, 20% year on year, right? There should be urgency because that means every single month you're out of a market, you're losing $10,000, $20,000. And if you can answer those 3 questions, have I got cash buffers? Have I got a deposit? And can I borrow 400 grand? Buy the fucking property. Just buy the property. Okay, so that's the third one. Invest when you can. The final one, and this was hard on how to kind of choose this one. As I said, it started at 10, got to 6, went to 4. The final piece is to not be fearful of a property costing you cash every single month, and as in cash flow. So don't be fearful of negative gearing. Don't be fearful of selling a property, CGT tax, and don't be fearful of income tax. I haven't got a story for you on this one because I just wanted this to just be a bit more of a conversation between the two of us. But we hear so many people get fearful. I think you were speaking to one yesterday or 2 days ago. The property's cost me 10, 15 grand. The property's grown by 150 grand, but the property's cost me 10, 15 grand. I don't really like the property costing me. I want to hear your thoughts about more so the negative gearing side.
Look, I'm not for negative gearing in a sense. I don't want to always run my properties at a loss.
Of course.
Definitely want cash flow.
Of course.
But during certain times, you have to weather the storm. Mm-hmm. And so if we have high interest rates, but as well we have, rental yields aren't as healthy like they used to be, say, 4 or 5 years ago when we were buying property and we we're getting easily a 7% rental yield on a house.
Easy.
It's sometimes even 8 or 9 on a duplex. Today, that doesn't exist really. So you have to start somewhere. And if you are having to take a loss and the property's costing you 10, 15 grand to hold, you got to look at the big picture of what's your goal and what you're trying to achieve. Now, the longer it takes for you to build that property portfolio or get into the market and only invest when the times are good, and when I say times are good is interest rates are low and you can afford the property, or you can afford it regardless if it's high, but you don't want that negative cash flow out of your pocket, there's going to be times where you're not going to be investing for a lot of that time. So I think looking at the big picture, and for some people looking at their goals, that client that you just mentioned there, only needs like 4 properties. Now, okay, only 4 properties. If they're all negative geared at $15,000 each, that's $60,000 a year. That's a lot. It is.
Yep.
If you can afford it, and of course you have to take in consideration that you put your rents up every single year and put it up to the right market rent, and do the right things by revaluing your rates and seeing if you can lower those rates. Over time, it's probably not going to be $60,000. It might be 40 or 50, 40 or 30 or even less.
Yep.
So having the big picture of looking forward and looking what's the positive things that will come is, one, your rents will go up. I had a client today, they put their rent up $60 from last year. That's a pretty big increase.
Huge.
You know, if your rents are going up, great. Number 2 is you want to be looking every 12 months to try and lower those rates, refinance, go for another lender. Especially if you get a high rate, you might get a 7% or 8% that's the type, your type of risk appetite because of your circumstances. See if you can refinance it after 12 months. And then I guess, if you have to pause because you can't afford to buy any more property, just wait and then invest when you can. Maybe your rates have gone down, you put your rents up after 12 months, then you can probably get your next property.
Yep.
And then it becomes more affordable. But the longer you're out of the market and the longer you take to get your properties, the longer it takes to get to your goal.
Yep. Agree. And I think, besides all of that, because all of that is very, very, very important points. And this is why in the previous section of invest when you can, you need to understand what your cash buffers are, right? If you can afford $50,000 that the portfolio is costing you, the more you can afford, if that's $100,000, let's say you're saving $100,000 a year. It's a lot of fucking money, right? But let's say you are saving $100,000 a year. That means that you can bring your portfolio to costing you $100,000 a year. I look at that and I go, that's all. That's 7-8 properties. That $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year, 7-8 properties. That means that your portfolio is growing by $800,000 a year. It's kind of what I said right at the start. Yes, a property might cost you $15,000. Yes, it's not nice, right? And it's sacrifice, right? You might not be able to go for, I don't know, what do they eat?
Smashed over.
Smashed avo. Yeah, that's what the kids eat, right? I'm old. You might not be able to eat smashed avo and toast, right? However, you're making $300,000 a year because you've got 2 properties, or you're making $400,000 a year because you've got 3 properties. Is that worth the sacrifice? That's essentially what you got to ask yourself, right? If a property cost me 10 to 15 grand a year first year, second year goes down to 12, third year, 10, and over 5 years, it might be not cost you anything, right? Especially once you're factoring taxes and depreciation. But if that property costs you 10 to 15 grand and the property grows by 100 to 150 grand every year, is that a fair trade-off? And that's what you need to ask yourself. For me, it is. For me, I'd be happy. I look at it, I don't care if my portfolio costs me 150 grand if I can afford it, because that means that I'm making $1 million a year, $1 million, more. So that's how I look at it. And that's, I think, how our best clients look at it. They don't look at it as like a cost for cost. If you go to the bank, you say, hey, Mr. Banker, I'll give you 100 grand. They'll give you a 500K asset, and that asset will grow to 600K in the next year. All of that for a $10,000 fee or $15,000 fee, which is the negative year. It's a pretty good deal, in my opinion.
Definitely.
In my opinion.
Definitely.
So that's that point there. On the other 2 things, also don't be fearful of capital gains tax. I think this is the stupidest thing in the world that people get fearful of this. I buy a property today for 500 grand. The property's worth double in a 4 to 6 year period, right? Off your research, off our averages. Yes, you've got to pay capital gains tax, and you sell the property for, let's call it $1 million. After capital gains, you might pay 150, whatever it is. You walk away with, I don't know, $400,000, $350,000. I would like $350,000 sitting in my bank account in 4 to 6 years' time. I don't know why people they're really funny about this. It's very interesting. Everyone would want $300,000 to $400,000 sitting in their bank account in 4 to 6 years. Do not be fearful, or do not get into property because of that. And the same with also passive income. If you make 100 grand from your portfolio, don't complain that you've now got to pay tax on that. Those are very simple things. I think more so the negative gearing is the one that holds a lot of our clients back, which is why it's in these 4 principles.
Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely. I was going to touch on the selling of the properties where people get emotional attachment to the properties. It's like buying a home, and they don't want to sell the home. They love the home. They love the property. But if your property stops growing and stops performing, because it will, eventually every market's going to slow down.
Of course.
And there might be a 5-year window where it slows down. Selling that asset and reinvesting that into another asset, like you said, you might have 350 grand after a sale. That 350 grand, if you're sold a house, you might be able to put that 350 grand in a commercial property and you might get a return of maybe 20, 30, 40 grand a year in cash flow per year off that property. And so that can be a great strategy if you look at it from, hey, yeah, long-term, 30 years I hold the property, yeah, I'm always going to do well, 100%. You always hear those stories, I should have sold that property or I should have bought that property. But sometimes holding a property for 30 years can be a lot of pain as well. A lot of maintenance, you got to look after the property, okay, but then reselling that property after it's done quite well and reinvesting it can be a great strategy. So don't get too emotionally attached to it.
I do agree. Unless it's an absolute cracker. But you're right. If you're really worried about negative gearing, buy a property for 500, let it double in 4 years or 6 years or however long it does, sell the property, go buy another property for, and put a 350K deposit on a 600K property. Then you won't have to worry about negative gearing. You'll be happy. If that's that is another strategy. But I think that is one of the big ones that holds a lot of people back. It's the fear of the portfolio is costing me money and it's not good. Work the growth, and a good way to kind of get around this, just from a calculations point of view, consider all of the values. So consider, the $10,000 a property is costing you. Also consider the growth that you're getting. If you've got 5 properties and you've made 500 grand in growth, but the portfolio has cost you $30,000, some people look at that and say the portfolio has cost me 30 grand. I look at that and say the portfolio has made you 470 this year.
Crazy thing is that and this is what I can't get my mind over, people's home loans can cost 50 grand, 100 grand. I've seen some clients of ours, 150 grand a year in repayments. They're all happy. They're happy with that. They're happy. Yeah, it's fine. But when a portfolio is costing you 30, 40 grand, or, I haven't got any clients that have costing them 50 grand or 60 grand, their portfolio. But let's just say it's costing you 30 grand a year to hold, but you're making money. You're not making money on the home. Yeah, okay, your home grows in value. You can take out the equity, use the equity to buy more property. Yes, but that's not tax deductible, as in like the home, all those repayments that you're paying, if it's $80,000 a year. And it's not generating you wealth. You've got all those properties that are generating you wealth and creating a future for you. So for me, personally, we don't have to touch on this topic, but owning a family home, sometimes I just look at it and go, oh, I don't really want that. I'd rather have properties that are costing me money, that are actually making me money, if that makes sense.
I agree. Or you buy, my only belief with family home is when you buy it outright. Which is obviously our goals. Cool, Frank. I think we're done. That's the 4 principles. So for you guys, the listeners, a really good way to do this is do a bit of an audit on yourself. And it's the 4 principles that we've just said, right? 1, it is a business. So scale yourself from 1 to 5 if you have to. It is a business. Are you the type of investor where Frank and I, we're I'd say probably at a 4 or 5, not to sound arrogant, but like we've had to go through the hard times. Shit goes wrong. That's just part of it. Last year, 14K expenses. That is what it is. We made money. We're good. Let's go. We understand it's a business. We understand shit's going to go wrong. Oh, you like old mate where if you made 150 grand a year, but you had to spend $3,000, you stop investing in property, right? Give yourself a bit of an audit on that. The second point was build your team. Have you got a team of all those professionals that I mentioned? If you need to remember, go back to that part. Or were you like both Frank and I, where our research and development team was our mother who never bought a property? Right? Think about that. That's like audit yourself from 1 to 5. Who do you need to hire? Who do you need to fire from your board of directors? That's a super, super important piece. The third piece is, when do you invest in property? Is it when Donald Trump puts a new thing of spray tan on his face? Or is it when, Elon Musk is don't worry about any of that bullshit. Invest when you can and ask yourself those 3 questions, right? Ask yourself those 3 questions. Is that your mindset, or is everything else come into play and you've got all those other questions that pop up and that stops you? So that's the third one. And then the fourth one, are you like Frank and I, where we're really not scared of negative gearing or the rules of the tax laws in Australia? Or are you like that investor whereby you're holding onto every single bit of cash and you don't want to invest because of these tax laws? So do yourself a bit of an audit. That's the best way that we kind of, when we were coming up, we kind of did something similar. And it's just to understand, how do you get to a 5 on all of those areas? And if you can, we've seen for ourselves, that is when, from a mindset perspective, you're actually going to just be able to keep leapfrogging and keep moving ahead with your portfolio. We've seen ourselves do it. We've seen our clients do it. But then also more so from a client's perspective that haven't got these principles, you will stop yourself from actually just getting stuck. So do that principle, do that audit. Frank, have you got any last words?
No, I think let's leave it at that. And if anyone has any questions, just reach out to us on our Facebook page or Instagram page, and we can always help and advise and give any tips if we can.
That's it. I love it. Thank you guys again. See you in the next episode.